Welcome to another weekly episode of my game predictions. This weekend marks the first of many to come here in April. Before getting into this week's matches though, there is some news I feel is very necessary to share with you guys so you know what's going on right now. So the first thing I wanted to say is that for the next 2 weeks, bare minimum, we will be not getting that extra day of matches that was originally promised to us in April. Thing number 2 I have to tell you guys, for those who aren't already aware, is that the league has officially canceled all live homestand events taking place in the regular season. All regular season games will be held using the online format from here on out. Information on how things will go in the playoffs has yet to be determined though. With the current pandemic situation not looking very promising, this is probably for the best. It's a shame, but it's absolutely necessary. If you purchased any tickets for a homestand, I recommend looking into how you can get a refund as soon as possible. Thing number 3 is that the first day of Chinese games may be postponed. You see, on April 4th, all of China is dedicating their day to honor those who have perished from the pandemic, and the government announced that all public entertainment activities are to be put to a stop for the day. The fourth thing I wanted to bring up is my record from last week's predictions. So in the first week back, I finished with a 7-3 record. Not too bad considering how much of a toss-up some of those games were. A solid week puts my overall record on the season at 28-13. Let's see if I can keep up this level of momentum. Now of course, the fifth and final thing we have to bring up is this week's hero pool. Thanks to Zoe's cats, the banned heroes are Wrecking Ball, Brigitte, McCree, and May. Ball being banned probably won't change all that much other than like for the hunters I guess, but the Brig, Cree, and May bans should lead to some drastic changes. While Double Shield could still be viable in some scenarios, it kind of feels like Dive is about to make a comeback. Stuff like Hack Fist or Tracer Genji with Winston, Diva, and Zen very well could see a fair amount of playtime. There's not much crowd control to slow them down, so Dive hero usage rates should be going way up. Dive is going to play a big part in this video and how I go about picking my winners for certain matches, so keep that in mind moving forward. Alright, I promise that's everything now, so let's roll on with the start of my Week 9 predictions. I'm really excited to share them, as some of these may surprise you a little bit. So to kick off a new weekend, the Toronto Defiant versus the Washington Justice. This is one of those games that theoretically could be close, but I can't say I'm really looking forward to it. From the results I've seen so far, this just feels like a battle between two subpar teams. Neither one has accomplished much so far. The most recent win for each of them has come against Boston, which really doesn't say much. The two teams find themselves sitting close to the bottom of the standings with their 2-4 records. With that said, the winner of this one will get a nice little boost with their current position. For a while, I kept going back and forth in my head over who I think is going to win, but after putting some serious thought into it, I think I'm leaning more towards Toronto. Some might say it's a big gamble to favor this Toronto team, but the doubters should keep two crucial factors in the back of their minds. For one, the direction we're heading into with the meta gives Toronto a very well-needed power-up. For the first time in a while, Beast has access to his strongest hero in Winston while also still having Reinhardt on the table. He should be right in his comfort zone, but don't get it super twisted. Roar's best hero is also Winston, so gaining the advantage really won't be easy, but even just canceling each other out would be really good for Toronto. And the reason for that has to do with how a dive-oriented meta will favor their DPS. Surefour on Sombra, Logic's on Tracer, Agility's on Doomfist. These are massive comfort picks. The Toronto DPS players were born for moments like these. The Justice DPS have to find a way to hold on. Stratus has shown promise on Doomfist and Sombra, but he can only play one of those heroes at a time. A lot of pressure is going to be resting on Corey. Can Corey play a good Sombra if needed? I'm not too sure. I trust in him to make plays on the Widow and the Tracer, but his Sombra is more of a mystery. I haven't seen Corey play this hero since GOATS, and I kind of have my doubts on whether or not he'll be good. The other thing I want you to think about is that the Justice have 2 games to worry about this weekend, while Toronto only has to prep for this one. Unless the Justice throw against Philly, the Defiant should theoretically have the advantage. I feel like prep time does not get enough attention at times because we've seen stuff like this happen all the time. Sometimes it can create a disadvantage, and I feel like we could witness one of those instances with this particular game. For the reasons I just listed, I have Toronto edging out the Justice 3-2. Although I think the Defiant have some noteworthy advantages, I can't help but feel like it's going to be close. Either Toronto plays bad or the Justice do better than expected. If I had to put money on it though, I'd probably say the first thing is what's going to happen. There's a certain pattern that Toronto just really likes to follow for some reason. It feels like they always follow this trend of playing a good game, then a bad one. With how inconsistent their player base is at times, I would not be surprised if this pattern continues. The Dallas Fuel will play their first game since week 1 against the Los Angeles Gladiators, who are coming off a roller coaster week. When you haven't seen a team play in like 2 months, it's hard to know what to expect. Because there's this element of surprise, I'm highlighting this as a key match of the week. Part of me wants to have faith in Dallas after showing promise during the opening week, but I still do feel skeptical at the same time. This week in particular makes it a tough decision. Dive sounds like it could play up to many of the Dallas players' strengths. Decay Tracer and Doomfist, Doha Sombra, Gamsu Winston, Crimzo and Unko Zen, and then of course you have Note on the one hero he's not awful at. Sounds like a potential recipe for success, right? But will it be enough? I'm not too sure. The Gladiators are not slouches either. They're coming off a win against the Shock and a loss where they showed fight against Seoul. Plus, it's not like the Gladiators are going to be bad at dive either. Last week, Birdwing and Mirror showed that they more than have what it takes to look strong on dive-oriented DPS heroes. Plus, let's not forget that like Gamsu and Note, OG and Space's signature heroes are Winston and Diva. I like the Gladiators in this meta just as much as I do Dallas. Now let's talk final results. There's serious room for an upset here, I'm not gonna lie. Dallas definitely could make a splash this week. But because I lack trust in them currently, I'm going to take a wild guess here and say Gladiators take it 3-1. With both teams likely to find comfort in this meta, it really comes down to individual impact, and I have more trust in the players on the side of the Gladiators to play both smarter and better. I think that Big Goose, Shaz, and Space will get the better of their counterparts. Now for the final game of Saturday. We're going to be ending day 1 on a strong note as we get the Valiant vs San Francisco Shock rematch. Last week, the Valiant stunned the Shock in an upset victory, and with how poor the Shock looked in-game, I'm very interested to see if they look any different this time. With that said, this absolutely needs to be a key match. Everybody needs to be on the San Francisco Shock watch this Saturday. Another poor performance out of them could really put them in trouble. They already have a below even record for the first time in over a year, so plummeting downward even further could not only affect their confidence, but also their level of frustration. So the question is, will the Shock falter once again? Or are they going to look like that championship caliber team we saw from last year and overcome this adversity? I personally think the Shock will figure it out. They don't feel like that 2019 Spitfire team. They're better than that. I just know it. While I definitely have my concerns, I'm going to chalk up what happened as an off week for them. Violet himself even said on Twitter that they were beating everybody in scrims, including the Gladiators and Valiant last week. They just played bad in the official games for some reason, and I'm going to take his word for it. Plus, the current hero pool system seems like it does favor the Shock. The DPS might have a serious leg over their competition. KSP can't carry on McCree. KSF can't play the Mei. Sure, KSF can play Doom, but can anyone on this team play a good Tracer or Sombra? I have my doubts about that. Meanwhile, the Shock DPS will probably be jumping for joy. They have multiple players who can do work on Doom and Tracer, and Sinatra will be able to fill in any Sombra duties as well. Other than McGravy, the DPS are the heart and soul of this Valiant roster. If they can't play at full strength, then they might be in some serious trouble. Plus, Moth gets to play Lucio again, so the Shock will definitely feel very comfortable this week. With that in mind, I think I gotta go with the Shock in a 3-2 victory. After beating them once, the Valiant will likely feel confident in this game. I say they play up to their competition and make the defending champs seriously earn it. I'm going to say the Shock start off slowly, but then fire on all cylinders late in the game to clutch out the win. Heading into Sunday, we started all off with, you guessed it, another Shanghai Dragons game. This time they'll be trying to get the revenge against a Chengdu Hunters team that caught them by surprise with a thorough 3-0 beating. Can Shanghai prove that last week's loss was a fluke? I think the answer is yes. The Hunters can't get away with using their superior ball comps this time around. That's no longer an option. So what will they do instead? Like with the last time these two faced off, tanks are going to be the key. Last time Stan won was at the mercy of Among, but this time it feels like all the tide is going to be in his favor. I said it last time, and I'll say it again. On paper, Shanghai is the better team. Keyword should. They've got a better meta for their tanks going for them, plus Li Jaegong gets to play Lucio, which everybody has always praised him for before joining the league. Him versus Yveltal is something to pay attention to here. Let's see if this young rookie's Lucio can outshine that of a veteran's. Honestly though, my gut instincts tell me this game is going to be close anyway. Let's say Shanghai wins it 3-2. Like with the Shock Valiant game, the Dragons will have to overcome their demons from last weekend, which results in a back and forth affair where they eventually squeeze out the victory in the final map. I predict that Jinmu and Leaf will carry their team and keep them in the game until the end, but it just won't be enough. Moving on from the Shanghai Chengdu matchup, we have the final game taking place in the Asian region this weekend when the Hangzhou Spark take on the Guangzhou Charge in an epic rematch. In their previous matchup, it felt like the meta slightly favored the Charge thanks to heroes like Sigma, Mei, and McCree being at their disposal. But with Mei and McCree now being banned, the Charge DPS might be in some serious trouble. Sure, Eileen should be able to carry the team with his Doomfist, but I have question marks surrounding Nero and Happy. Can one of them play the Sombra or Tracer good enough? Bozzy and Godspeed are really good at these types of heroes, so it's going to be really hard. I suppose Happy could try and bait somebody into swapping to Widow, or maybe Nero could just play Pharah, but part of me believes that just won't be enough. That Spark tank line is going to be a problem in my opinion. I just know it. This is Gushue and Rhea's time to shine. Unless the Charge can adjust to that really aggressive style of play, it's going to be an absolute nightmare for the Charge backline. I have the Spark taking this 3 maps to 1. The Charge will need a sick game plan in place if they even want to stand a chance. This is the Spark's game to lose. They'd have to play some pretty sloppy Overwatch if they were to lose this game in my opinion. That's just the type of feeling I get when I look at what heroes are going to be played. This is Spark favored all the way. Now watch the Charge make me eat those words, lol. Transitioning over to the next game, we have what should make for a fun rematch when the Houston Outlaws take on the Paris Eternal. The last time these two faced off, the Outlaws rolled the opposition, but then the Eternal somehow beat the Fusion the next day. This time around though, Paris only has to worry about the Outlaws. All of their attention will be centered on them, and I don't think we're going to see that same weird lineup they ran again. With Winston being viable, that should mean No Smite gets the start if they don't want to throw, that is. Another thing to keep in mind with Paris is that they'll be carrying on without their flex support player, Hip, who has decided to retire from the league for the sake of his health and well-being. I know it may not seem like the biggest loss in the world since they have Gray, who is around the same skill level, but the fact of the matter is that the team was looking solid with Hip as the starter. Hip was playing some pretty solid Overwatch, so now it's up to Gray to step up his game. I'm a tiny bit concerned that the synergy may be a little off as a result of this change too. Not only that, but we've recently discovered that Hip was a major leadership figure for this Paris team. This especially goes for the young rookies. Not only has he given them guidance, but also a sense of comfort, as for an example, he helped Hanbin get over his stage nerves in his debut by giving him a hug and telling him everything would be fine. That hole at the leadership position could potentially cause issues if things turn out for the worse. I'm kind of in a weird place with Paris. When thinking about it logically, overall they're a better team than Houston, and yet, between Hip retiring and this meta not really being the best for them, I don't know if I can pick them to win. I know it may sound silly for some, but I'm kind of worried about their DPS, believe it or not. If they were to run Sombra Doom, then I think they might be in some trouble. Can I really trust Nico to play good enough on the Doom or even Sombra? Last time he played Sombra was against Houston, and he did not have a very good day. Call me crazy if you want, but I'm liking Houston's chances of beating Paris for a second time. This kind of meta literally plays up to all of their strengths. Muma gets Winston again, Blase gets Doom, and Dante gets his Tracer and Sombra. I'm going to pick the Outlaws to take it 3-1 as they continue to be that team Paris just can't defeat. I for one think the hero pool for this week will benefit them tremendously. No McCree or May with Muma not feeding on Ryan. This is Houston's chance, guys. I know picking Houston's always a big gamble, but sometimes you gotta risk it for the biscuit. Anyway, next up on the schedule is the Philadelphia Fusion versus the Washington Justice. As I mentioned with the Toronto game, this weekend is not going to be kind to the Justice. The Fusion, like with the Defiant, only have to worry about prepping for Washington. Plus, you have to factor in how this meta affects their team. Sada plays more of the hero he's most comfortable on, and Carpe gets to show off on Tracer and Sombra. Stylistically, I think the Fusion just benefit more from a fast-paced meta too. With guys like Corey and Arc, the Justice favor a more slow and methodical tempo. The Justice need to make some big adjustments. There's also the Fusion's secret weapon to worry about. That's right, I'm talking about Chipsa. Nothing's guaranteed, obviously, but I seriously think we might see him play this weekend with Doom being a relevant pick. Plus, I've been told that Chipsa hasn't been streaming much this week, which hints to him possibly participating more in scrims. Long have we waited. Chipsa activated, boys. Because there seriously is a chance, this just needs to be a key match. Behind the clutch play of his teammates, plus him playing a hero he's actually good at, I'm going to say the Fusion 3-0 the Justice in Chipsa's Overwatch League debut. If we look at some of the individual matchups, the Justice don't even match up that terribly. I just have questions about their ability to play a fast and aggressive style. I also just want it to be bold here. A 3-0 sweep plus Chipsa playing. Sounds pretty crazy to think about, doesn't it? The Valiant will play the Dallas Fuel in a Week 1 rematch. Dallas is looking for some payback after losing to these guys in front of their home crowd, so you already know the Fuel players are going to be coming out swinging. I've already discussed how I feel about both of these teams heading into the weekend, so let's cut straight to the chase. The Fuel on paper are better. I have no clue if the Valiant can even function in a dive meta. Meanwhile, the Fuel have already shown me signs that it works for them. Gamsu and Note made a name for themselves using Monkey Diva during the Boston days, and Decay's shown great prowess on the Tracer. With the Fuel, you know what you're gonna get, but the Valiant are a total mystery who could either massively disappoint or continue to surpass your expectations. What version of the Valiant will we see this time around? They've already shown both sides twice, so I don't know what to expect. My brain is telling me to just go with the safe option in Dallas. It makes the most sense, but if I look back at my previous predictions, that's not always the right way to approach it. So you know what? I'm going to bite the bullet and pick the Valiant. Why not? They've already beaten Dallas once, and that victory over the Jacques last week might have given them newfound confidence that makes them play better. The Valiant, against all odds, take it in a close 3-2 victory. I don't know what it is this week, but I'm feeling really risky. Let's see if it backfires or not. Overwatch League has Shanghai Dragons taking on the Hangzhou Spark. If last week told me anything about the Chinese teams, it's that there isn't going to be a clear favorite in these matches for the time being. Every game was either a blowout or extremely close. No in-between whatsoever. With the meta potentially being much different, maybe that'll change this time, I guess. The thought of finally getting to witness the Spark play dive is really exciting. That plus the fact that the Dragons and Spark game sounds like a close matchup on paper makes me want to highlight this as my first key match of the week. When I think about these two in the head-to-head, I can't help but feel like a dive-centric meta does favor the Spark. Guxue and Rhea are known for being aggressive playmakers, and they should be able to put that on full display when playing Winston Diva. Can I trust the Dragons tank line to match this? I'm not too sure. DPS-wise, things are a bit closer though. Both teams have some very reliable and flexible options, but in all honesty, I lean more towards the Spark here as well. If Hackfist is viable like I believe it might be, then the Spark should have the advantage. I know we all look at Ding and Diem as these really nice Sombra players, but Godsby is solid on that hero in his own right. In my opinion, he was the most underrated Sombra player in the league last year. As for Doomfist, Bazzi was a disgustingly good Doom in the playoffs last year, and with Youngjin no longer being on Shanghai, I don't know if I can trust anybody on that team to pick up the slack. Could Ding, Fleta, or Lip maybe pick up the Doom? Perhaps, but I have my doubts on how well they'll be able to perform. If someone does indeed step up on the Doom though, then they should have everything else covered. Like I said before, it feels like anything could happen in these Chinese games, but my gut instinct tells me this matchup favors the Spark, so I'm gonna say they take it 3-2. Although this is Spark favored, I say the Dragons make them earn this. Shanghai's coming off such a tough loss, so I expect them to come out and play very angry. Heading into game number 2, the Hunters will play the Charge. I'll be honest, things don't look too good for your boy Among. With his signature Wrecking Ball now being banned, the Hunters will have no choice but to use a brand new strategy. If we see Winston be meta, then I suspect that their other main tank player, A-Ting, will get the starting nod. And I really don't know how this guy will play at the Overwatch League level, so I'm kind of worried about the Hunters tank line here. The other question mark I have for Chengdu lies within flex support. Molly did reasonably well in his debut and all, but Shu is kind of a beast. Not letting this guy get the better of him will be quite the challenge. Everywhere else though, the Hunters don't look too bad matchup wise. DPS is going to be the really fun part of this game. Lee versus Eileen on Doomfist sounds so amazing, and I really hope we get to see it. And how about Nero versus Jinmu on like Genji or maybe Pharah? The DPS are going to be in one serious battle here. I'm expecting to witness some beautiful highlights from these guys. I kind of hold a weird stance here. On paper, the two should be relatively even, but I feel like I almost need to predict the opposite of what I think after last week's games in China. I'm going to embrace the wackiness by saying the Charge clean sweep the Hunters. Is this a crazy prediction? Yeah, it definitely is, but it's so crazy that it just might work. Plus, something just tells me that the main tank might be a problem for the Hunters. Until I see some proof that tells me otherwise, I'm going to assume that they struggle to find their footing without Among. And with that said, this concludes everything I have to say about this weekend's games. So now I turn things over to you. Who do you have winning this weekend, and what are your predictions for the meta? Let me know down in the comments section, and if you enjoy this content, be sure to hit that like button and sub if you haven't already done so. If you're interested in supporting me beyond my content, then consider following me on Twitter, joining my Discord server, and purchasing a channel membership for some exclusive perks. And as always, thanks so much for watching today's video, I really do appreciate it, and until next time, this is ATP, signing out. Peace.